So Taylor Swift, a notable pop musician, has sold a lot of records, and Damon Albarn, a notably older British pop musician, has also sold a lot of records under a number of different names and projects. Got into a little bit of a beef, and it's not great. Listen here, I'll put all my cards on the table here very early on. I am a huge Gorillaz fan. I have talked about it on the 200 and something episodes of this podcast before. We did a Gorillaz special. We've talked about how, Taylor Swift's poppiness is not necessarily our thing, but we've also warmed up to some of Taylor Swift's later albums and her stances as a musician on both reclaiming her work as an artist and standing up for artists being able to make money off of their own work, not just herself, but other artists as well. And I've also had conversations with Taylor Swift fans in much the same way I have conversations with other fans of other musicians. And I've started to kind of see the Swiftie side of things, and why I can't say I'm that much of a fan in that way. I can sort of see that it was very easy for me to tell that even though I'm a Gorillaz fan, I can see the appeal, and it's easy for me to tell that even though I'm predisposed to a lot of Damon Albarn things, being a Gorillaz fan, liking Blur, etc., immediately when this happened, I was just like, Damon Albarn, you're a fucking idiot. What are you doing? So,
Damon, shut up.
What had happened?
Your iPad, Damon.
What had happened was Damon is doing a press tour for a couple of live shows that he's doing in America for his more recent album, The Nearer the Fountain, the More Pure the Stream Flows, that we reviewed and we were sort of largely unimpressed with last year. And at one point he says, quote, "It's actually quite hard doing a whole concert on piano. You can't hide anything. You learn whether the songs are any good or whether they were popular at the time because of the sound and the attitude. It's a day of reckoning, to be honest, that not much modern music can withstand." I think that's ultimately fair. I think can be said about a lot of concerts. Most musicians performing live, I think that is when you're testing your music, your ability to perform your songs live and recreate them. And we talked about that's what really separates a good musician from a great musician, is how they sound away from the studio. But when the interviewer, Michael Wood from the Los Angeles Times, pointed out that Swift's songwriting, for example, Taylor Swift's songwriting is good enough to be stripped down in instrumentation, Albarn snapped back, she doesn't write her own songs. Saying that, basically going on this thing saying co-writing doesn't count. I know what co-writing is. Co-writing is very different to writing. I'm not hating on anybody. I'm just saying it's a big difference between a songwriter and a songwriter who co-writes. Doesn't mean the outcome can't be really great. I suppose I'm just a traditionalist in that sense.
Yeah, Damon, you're on, son.
Yeah. So never mind the sort of difference between you're both trying to say, Damon, that there is no distinction or, it's no disrespect for co-writing. That being said, co-writing is different from writing. And you're ultimately making a point that Taylor Swift doesn't write her own songs. She only co-writes them. So even putting only there is different. When in reality, if you are adjacent to the music industry at all, you understand that songwriting is a complicated process. And sometimes co-writers, for example, Sean and I are co-hosts. There is we could both be hosts of Audioface. We could both be co-hosts of Audioface. When it comes to the show that you see, there's a pretty much an equal amount of work in that. So,
I mean, look at Radiohead songs. Technically, it's not Tom York's song. It's not Johnny Greenwood's song. It's a collective effort. That's all these things. You work with producers, you work with other things, and they might just flip two words, and technically you're a co-writer. You might just do two stanzas, and then you're a co-writer. So there's a lot of variables within it too.
Yeah, it's very
it's not
nebulous
just
term.
Your Ariana Grande, who definitely gets help writing. Those types of pop artists, your ones that we like to clown on, are the ones that they don't really write their own music that much. They might do it here or there, but they have the help from giant media conglomerates and from the record industry as well, because they want to pump out more and more records. But Taylor definitely actually really writes her own stuff. So,
yeah, you like it or not, Taylor writes her own music, and also
she put it on Twitter. I'll read her quote after she saw the stuff from Damon. She said, "At Damon Albarn, I was such a big fan of yours until I saw this. I write all of my own songs. Your hot take is completely false and so damaging. You don't have to like my songs, but it's really fucked up to try and discredit my writing. Wow."
Yeah. She added, "P.S. I wrote this tweet all by myself in case you were wondering," which highlights it highlights how incredibly condescending. It highlights how incredibly
That's
condescending that
hilarious.
Damon Albarn's like comments were, and you I want to do my sort of like partial defense of Damon Albarn here, in that you don't have to look at Damon Albarn's actions. Like, look at the Gorillaz project, look at all the different projects he's done. He's made it an effort to collaborate with and highlight and put on a pedestal, even more so than himself, a number of different artists, a wide range of artists, like hundreds of artists, literally, across all continents, across many different languages, men, women, gender nonconforming people, all age groups. Like, the project is, that's why I think like the Gorillaz project is such a great representation of modern popular music, because it's so varied and so global in that way. And so Damon should know what co-writing looks like. There are a lot of songs that are like, okay, sure, maybe Damon co-wrote it, but like with Désolé, like Fatoumata Diawara, like she takes over that song and it's in another language. Damon Albarn speaking broken ass French that makes no sense. Did he co-write that song? Is he less of an artist? Like, what? It's a ridiculous distinction. And so Albarn, sort of sensing that the Swifties were coming in the distance like a slow roll, started to apologize and saying on Twitter, "I totally agree with you. I had a conversation about songwriting that, and sadly it was reduced to clickbait. I apologize unreservedly and unconditionally. The last thing I want to do is discredit your songwriting. I hope you understand." Damon Albarn, I'm nominating you for the Noted Little Bitch Award.
Damn.
I never thought I would say those words. But you just got quoted, dog.
You just got caught on 4K. Like, you should be wearing that sweatshirt right now, Dan. Like, that is damn.
But I don't, like, you were just quoted in an article, man. Like, that's it. If you're trying to, I mean, you didn't quit Twitter, so it's not like an automatic Noted Little Bitch nomination.
It's not like the Maddie Healy,
yeah. But and facing the raft of Taylor Swift fans, I understand if you would quit Twitter under that. But that being said, Damon Albarn doesn't really use Twitter much. In fact, ironically enough, I think he quote unquote co-writes his own tweets, as in like doesn't use his own Twitter. So there's that. I'll just leave that there. But the whole hiding behind how you were quoted in the newspaper, like the LA Times article is up to be seen. And I'm trying not to even speak from my bias of like being a journalist and knowing journalists, but oftentimes when musicians say things and they get pushback from the journalist in the article, but they're totally fine with it because the context is just the journalist and the artist in the room with a couple of people on either side. Then it actually gets read by more people, and what other people call cancel culture, we just call a reaction to your speech, other people using their same free speech. All right. And so people used their free speech and said Damon Albarn's decisions are dumb. Gorillaz fans, myself included, said Damon Albarn's comments are dumb. And rather than Damon Albarn taking fuller responsibility, he said that, my comments were reduced to clickbait. It was a very lightly edited transcript of the interview, dude. So I would go harder on Damon Albarn, but he has a 25-year track record of actually working with other musicians. So maybe this can be resolved in Song Machine 2 to appear on Netflix, maybe or maybe not. And Taylor Swift and 2D can do a wonderful ballad. And maybe, much like the Feel Good Inc. Madonna crossover, Taylor Swift can just take over the whole thing and overshadow the band.
I'm down.
Not bitter about that at all. But yeah, way to...
Damn.
I really don't want Damon Albarn to like end up being an uncle rocker, which he like borders on doing all the time. But
I mean, his solo work definitely did, but the last Gorillaz album I liked a lot. So there's that.
Yeah,
you got to figure out, you got to evolve and change in that way. So
definitely.
I mean, compare to Tom York, where he's like, I love Billie Eilish, she's doing her own fucking thing. Like, doesn't like belittle anybody, I guess, in that way. So, but
so that was the funniest part that I didn't mention about this, is that Damon Albarn comments on Billie Eilish, saying that like, in contrast to Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish is an incredible songwriter, and literally mentions the fact that Billie Eilish and her brother,
let's say literally
as though like
brother,
record
like,
scratch,
they co-write everything. Like, you realize how much Phineas works on her albums stuff, right? He made complete songs for her to do.
You know, he was misquoted.
Not belittling her at all, because we know how much we fucking love her records, both of them, and Phineas' solo work as well.
Yeah, we're not the ones saying co-writing is any less a form of writing. And yeah, that's a
No.
great example where like Phineas has his own ass career, and Billie Eilish has her own ass career. But the fact that Damon Albarn very clearly understands that, because that was the comparison he made in the direct sentence that was a clickbait misquote of his transcript, that like further cements
Parody
him
in
as
Minecraft.
that further cements him as like one of the first noted little bitch nominations of this season of
That's a
Audioface, which is
solid NLB right there too.